Good evening and welcome to my light-polluted city balcony and this army of smart telescopes. The reason for this tonight is because today, as of January 16th, ZWO has finally released the planning functionality for the Seestar, so I will be testing that out, and I will also be comparing it with the similar features of the Vaonis Vespera Pro as well as the Dwarf 3. My name is Lutza and you're watching the Space Koala channel. Let's get into it. What is the planning functionality and why would you want to use that? Some way, shape, or form of planning or scheduling is part of most telescope control software, and it is simply a way of storing the targets that you would like to photograph together with all the settings that you would like to apply while taking those photos, so that when you're out under the stars, you can just click and everything should be done automatically without you having to lose precious time under the stars. Now, in addition to not losing time under the stars, there are many other benefits that you will have by using the plan feature, especially when using a smart telescope like the Seestar, but it's the same idea also with the Vespera and with the Dwarf. One limitation of using these smart telescopes that are alt azimuth is field rotation. So what you can do is you decide a series of targets that you would like to image in a given period, and each one of them you always image for an hour or two and always during the same hours of the night. So for example, I say that I want to capture the Andromeda galaxy, but I will be shooting it every single night between 8 and 9 p.m. so that every night it will be approximately at the same angle, and then I will not have any issues with field rotation. The next thing is the mosaic mode, where you get to capture much larger areas with the Seestar, for example, but at the cost of needing much more time to collect data from all those areas of the sky. So in order to take a good image in mosaic mode, you really need to spend multiple nights on the same target. Of course, the plan mode is not strictly necessary for that because you can do that manually. You can always set up the same target. And I did a video recently showing how to do a multi-night mosaic stack manually on the Seestar. I will link that somewhere. So if you haven't seen it, I think it's a good idea to watch. Now, without further ado, let's get these set up. The plan for tonight is to set up the same exact plan on all three of these telescopes so we can see how they compare. We can contrast the features and the ease of use as well. Let's start with the Seestar. Opening up the Seestar app, now we have a new feature called Plan. This is just under Scenery, which is a menu that wasn't there before. And clicking on it just shows us the list of plans available, which we don't have any of. We can create a plan. Since I will be shooting the same series of targets in all of January, I will name my plan according to that, and I will call this January. I confirm this created the plan. Going into the plan, we now have this planetarium, the usual view, with this new thing at the bottom that we'll see in just a second. Now, to add new targets to this, we can type in M42, which is the Orion Nebula. We can locate the target position. This then centers Orion Nebula with the rectangle, and we can do our framing right now. I like the field of view, but I would like to rotate it. So going into framing, I can now rotate this so that I can fit everything inside in a much nicer way. And I can also actually slightly move it. Once I'm happy with the framing, I click on Add. And here you see the recommended time frame during which it says that you can shoot it. Now, you can move this time frame that you want to shoot it by moving these red lines in both directions. So I will just be moving this into the future, and I will be turning the light pollution filter off for this target. Then you click on the check mark to accept. Now we can search for the next target by clicking on the Objects button, and I will be searching for the Horsehead Nebula, which is my next target. Once again, locate target position. We have it here similarly to before. The field of view is nice. We just need to move it a little bit. Framing, a rotation. Once we're happy, we click Add. And now we have this like automatic location where it put it, but I'm going to move the lines so that I shoot it after the Orion Nebula. Once happy with that, save with the check mark, and we can go into our third target, which will be the Rosette Nebula. And this time I reframe and rotate it a little bit, but also do a tiny mosaic just so I can fit the entire nebula inside the frame. I change the timing to after the Horsehead Nebula, and we're done. So when we accept, we have the new plan here, and there's the option to execute. So I can just click on that, and now it says it is ongoing. Now, of course, it will not start yet because there's a few minutes left until 9 o'clock, and that is when it's actually going to start going to the target. Next, let's set up the Dwarf. And all of these telescopes, you can also adjust the plans when you're not even connected, and that's what I'm going to do here because I'm not yet connected to the Dwarf. By clicking on Schedule, it brings up the option to create a new schedule, and I will enter the name, which will be exactly the same, January. And then it gives you the option to set the location automatically, which is something that the Seestar does anyway. But here you could also do it manually. Like if you're going to travel, you can already say that you're going to be in a different location. And then the date of the plan, that is just going to be today. And here we have a very similar idea. We have the calendar view kind of, and then we have this plus sign here that we can use to add targets. So you can choose manual coordinates, or you can do the recommended targets, which is what I'm going to do. And the same idea, M42 for the Orion Nebula. It is exactly the same way that you set up the scheduling for the time frame that you want to shoot in. You can also do other parameters here, but you cannot do the mosaic. Then we have Barnard 33 for the Horsehead Nebula. Same exact thing as before. And then finally, we have the Rosette Nebula. Okay, now I've connected to the telescope, and here it says pending synchronization. So I can actually synchronize it now. Now this information is being sent over to the Dwarf, and I could actually also leave from here and it was still executed. So it is now waiting for the start time. Finally, for the Vespera, we have the Singularity app where I can go into Plan My Night, create a plan, then it asks me for my location. I will choose my existing location where I am currently. I select today's date and I name the plan, the same exact idea, January. And here I can enable advanced observation, and I'll go into that in a second what it is. I will enable it. Now this view is a little bit different from the other two because it already shows you like a scrollable list of targets that are recommended, along with these blue lines that show you which part of the night they're actually visible. So we go for the first target, M42, the Orion Nebula. Same way to control the time frame. Then we have Barnard 33 for the Horsehead Nebula. And we have the Rosette Nebula. Now, one thing that is unique about the Vespera is if you have the advanced observation turned on, you can also enable Perseverance. And Perseverance is the one unique feature of the Vespera that the other two don't have in mosaic mode. And that is that you can do multi-night continuity, meaning that you go to the same target as the night before, and instead of starting a new stack, it just adds new subs to the one of yesterday. This is available not just for single targets, but also in Plan My Night. So you can actually turn that on. When it continues tomorrow, it will just add to the stack. And I think that this is a really nice feature, especially in the mosaic mode when you really need so much time. That said, it's time to start shooting the stars.
Finding object. Object is centered.
Okay, so the plans have been going really well and everything is working as designed. The nice thing is that while you're still continuing with the plan mode, you can already have a look at the images that you already finished. So if I go into the gallery on the Seestar, I have the subs of the M42 mosaic, and then I have the M42, which of course you can do the AI editing and all that stuff that you want to do. And then I have my Horsehead as well. And I think that this was taken with the light pollution filter, and I wanted to take that off and I forgot. And I can see that I've already done 68 subs for the Rosette Nebula, which is still going on for another half an hour. All three telescopes have just finished a plan just in time because it has now gotten completely cloudy. So we can have a look at the results. First, let's have a look at the Seestar. Into the app, we can go into the plan just to see what happened. It says up here that it has ended, and then I have the option to restart it if I want to, or delete it. Then going on to the album on the Seestar, I can see that I have all the images that I've taken. I have both the stacks and I have the raw images. So I have a total of 6 items. This is the stack of Orion. Then I have the stack of the Horsehead. I used the light pollution filter here, even though I didn't mean to. That was my bad. And then we have the Rosette Nebula, which really could have used a lot more integration time on all 3 telescopes. And yeah, I have all the subs, and if I continue or re-execute this plan tomorrow, I can restack those or, you know, do whatever you want. Now, let's have a look at the Vespera. Open up the Singularity app at the top, it immediately says plan finished. If I go into that, I can see the overview of all 3 targets, and then going into each of them, the M42, in the Singularity app, I can actually go back in time and see how the stack was at every stage. And then going into the Horsehead Nebula, this is cropped, like the photo is not really cropped, but on the phone it's only displaying like the center part of it, and it's done in the weirdest way. So if I download the picture, I will see this whole area that I can scroll over right now. And then we have the Rosette Nebula that looks equally sad. There's barely any signal. It is a tiny telescope and a much more faint nebula. Now, of course, in the Vespera, since I've set them up as perseverance targets, if I wanted to continue with these stacks tomorrow, I could just add more subs to the same stack without having to re-stack the entire thing. And as for the Dwarf, if I open the app, it just says schedule accomplished, and if I click on that, it just shows me the individual targets, each of them with a checkbox next to it. But going back and checking the album, I can actually check the 3 images that were taken. So we start out with Orion, and then we have the Horsehead and the Flame, and then we have the Rosette Nebula, which is very visibly already disturbed by the clouds. So even from this very short run, since we had different targets, we had clouds, we had all kinds of things and light pollution, the new plan feature on the Seestar worked really well, and it worked equally well on the other 2 smart telescopes. So I will be using it on the Seestar and continue using it on the other ones. Most likely I don't do multiple different targets in a night. It's more likely going to be a single target over multiple nights, because I'm very big on doing lots of integration time on a target. But it is great that it is now a feature also of the Seestar. In regular astrophotography software and rigs, it is a very standard feature that really makes your life so much simpler. So I'm very happy that it is now part of all these smart telescopes. Regarding how they compare to one another, I would say that each one of them has something that is a little bit of a benefit compared to the other 2. So for example, the Seestar, obviously extremely intuitive. I downloaded the software update this afternoon and it worked right out of the box. It was extremely clear how to use it. It is very user-friendly. I also like that you have the option to combine the Plan My Night together with the framing. So both for a mosaic mode and also just for the rotation. I think that is great because you really need to do it. Also because being in altazimuth, if you're planning something for later in the night, you cannot check at this stage what angle that is going to be in the future. At least in the Seestar app, you don't see that. So I think this is great to actually ensure that it is stacked in the direction that you like. As for the Dwarf, some of the functionality is much more limited. You don't have the mosaic mode, you don't have the rotation. However, you can do the more advanced scheduling for multiple targets in the future. And also, biggest benefit that I didn't even use tonight is that currently it's the only smart telescope that you can polar line, which obviously helps a lot with field rotation. We know that this feature is soon coming to the Seestar, but it is not available right now. So that is why I didn't polar align the Dwarf, just so I could have a more fair comparison of a very similar setup for all of them. And as for the Vespera, Vaonis was the first company that came out with the mosaic mode a really long time ago, and then they were the first ones to do the Plan My Night, and so far they're the only ones doing the continuity mode, which they call perseverance. This is obviously a huge thing because we need to do many, many hours. I have to say this is also partially because of the fact that it takes huge images because the sensor is like 12 megapixels. So they came up with this continuity thing, so it would be enough to only save the master stacks from each night, and then you would keep adding onto that. And that is because these files are so large and it takes forever to download them because you can only download it via Wi-Fi. That it's the only way you're going to be able to do multi-night. So it is a nice feature, but I also think that it's much more needed for this telescope than it is for the other 2. If you have one of these 2 scopes, have you been using the plan feature? And if you have the Seestar, are you going to start? I really can't think of a reason not to if you want to use these as photography devices rather than just live streaming space to your phone and trying to observe objects in an electronically assisted manner. So my conclusion is really that everything works out of the box, everything works as expected on the Seestar, but also on the other two telescopes. I'm very happy that we have this feature in the Seestar now. My observation is being cut short by these clouds that are passing, but it should get better over the next few days, and I hope it will for you as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you clear skies.